Flavor Balance Heat, the podcast for hot sauce lovers and makers, is brought to you by Scoville.com. Try Scoville.com's hot sauce subscription box, where you pick the heat, flavor, and food pairings you want in your box. Get 1 or 3 bottles delivered to your door each month. Choose your heat level, flavor profile, and food pairings. And it's completely customizable each month. You no longer have to worry about getting sauces you don't like or won't use. Scoville.com specially curates each month's box based on your personal preferences. And best of all, High Desert Sauce Co., Butterfly Bakery of Vermont, and Irish Spike's unique hot sauces are all available at Scoville.com. Welcome to Flavor Balance Heat, the podcast for hot sauce lovers and makers. I'm Spike.
I'm Zach.
And I'm Claire.
And today we're talking to Taylor Rose, the Mustard Queen. Hello.
Hi there.
Hi, Taylor.
Hi. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh,
even though I'm
thank
not
you.
really hot sauce.
Do you like spicy things?
Love them.
Yeah.
Well, then you're in the right place. So, welcome to the shit show. And you can start off by telling us your history with spicy foods and how you got into doing mustard content.
Oh, man. This is a very long, intricate story, I feel, for my life.
Fantastic.
I grew up a very picky eater. Very, very picky eater. And I was always handed ketchup for things I was fed. And I was never excited about food. But I remember one time in the 8th grade, there was a girl in the lunch line with me. And she's like, "What are you doing with that?" Puts a little honey mustard sauce packet on my tray. And 8th grade, I had cashed out. And I could probably walk in there and point out to the exact area I was where I had this mind-blowing moment of sauces don't have to taste like this. So basically I got into this whole, I really dislike ketchup and I want to tell everyone about that. 2017, 2018, I created a Facebook group called Ketchup is a Garbage Condiment. And it was just one of those things I tagged whenever I saw people overusing the condiment. And in 2019, my Facebook group had gotten fairly big. I think I had like 10,000 people in my Facebook group at this time. And she's like, "Hey, you should try and make some money off this. I set up a t-shirt thing so you can sell shirts that say ketchup is a garbage condiment." And I go, "Okay, thank you for setting that up for me so I don't have to do anything about that." I get my shirt in, and the first place I go is to a Nashville music festival. And I go here, and so many people want to come up to me and tell me their thoughts on the ketchup as a garbage condiment. And I had one guy come up to me, and he goes, "Hey, can I take a picture of you in your shirt? I would love to show this to my friend." And I go, "Okay." And so I pose, let him take the photo, and he walks away. The next morning, I see that he had posted that on a Facebook group. Hundreds of thousands of comments, millions of views, so many terrible internet things that happened, but also so many great internet things that happened. Because like a lot of people were furious with me. Like I insulted their own children by saying ketchup is a garbage condiment. But then I also got all those people that were like, "Wow, I thought I was the only one. Since ketchup really is such a standard condiment." But it wasn't until 2022 I decided I didn't like making content about the things I hate anymore. And so I decided I was going to do like alternative condiments, like teach people how to make the other condiments. And so my first episode in 2022, I'm like, cool, I am going to make something about mustard. And then it never stopped. I never got to any of the other condiments.
Well, Claire is going to be very happy because she is a mustard nerd.
I love mustard. And I love making mustard. And I started making mustard and hot sauce around the same time. And hot sauce, of course, has this like gigantic fan base that like mustard doesn't have. And it's
the hot sauce industry is super crowded.
Yeah. And mustard is harder to make than hot sauce for sure. And it kind of drives me nuts too, because it's like so much harder to make and it's so much more nuanced. And if you do one thing a little bit differently, then it acts differently and all of that. Whereas hot sauce, like, you just throw it all in and make it and it's delicious. And I felt like I put in all this hard work and people were like, "Oh yeah, but we're gonna eat the hot sauce. Yeah, mustard, whatever. I'll buy my 1 jar and I'll put it in the fridge and right next to my 27 bottles of hot sauce. And like, I feel like mustard doesn't get the respect that it needs.
It really doesn't. It really doesn't get the respect it needs. And I can completely understand that from a production standpoint, because when you're creating mustard, it is not only the temperature and the acidity of the ingredients and the timing of when you put in the ingredients, but it's also how long do you let those ingredients sit before you add in other ingredients. It is so nuanced.
Yeah.
So nuanced.
Yeah. I had a what I call the year of bad mustard. That every batch, every like 2/3 of my batches of mustard were turning out awful, really bitter, really just like it was, that initial like raw mustard burn that wasn't going away. Like, and I couldn't figure out what it was,
and it just never went away.
And it never went away, and didn't burn off. And but then like every once in a while it would be fine, and then randomly it wouldn't be again. And I could for a year I couldn't figure it out. And then one day I had the dawning realization that of my 3 pots that I would cook mustard in, 2 were aluminum.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
I figured it out.
If you're listening to this, not realizing why I just like almost found out my drink there, you don't realize how much that can change the flavor of using a reactive material. You really don't realize that.
And the thing was that I was making hot sauce in there, and the vinegar will react to the aluminum, but it doesn't pick up that same bitterness that mustard picks up. The mustard was just like permanently like bitter, and like it was shockingly different.
But you know why mustard is bitter, right?
It's a
defense mechanism.
Yes, right, exactly. And of course, there's the whole like evolution of human beings and mustard seed, like together, throughout history. I mean, throughout all of human history, we kind of developed alongside mustard seeds, and like evolved with mustard. Like it is one of those like inextricably tied to human evolution, like plants.
I am weirdly working on a piece, and I say weirdly working on, I'm at the very beginning stages of this, where I discuss how mustard is a story of human history, but ketchup is a story of globalization.
I love that. That is,
and that's kind of like the piece I'm working on, because like ketchup has like really changed over time of what ketchup actually is, and the definition of it and the purpose of it has changed over time. Like it wasn't until late 1800s where ketchup became mostly a tomato-based thing, and we are focusing on tomato ketchup. And right now I think ketchup is garbage. But if you were squirting ketchup over your fries or dipping the ketchup in there, but prior to tomato ketchup, it was just very much so we are concentrating flavors into a sauce to make other dishes easier to consume. Like mushroom ketchup and walnut ketchup and all those. It's very much so a flavor concentrate. It wasn't really a dipping condiment. So like over time, it's really changed. But
now it's just tomato candy.
Yeah, it's tomato candy.
Right.
Well, and even the fact that it's smooth. My mother-in-law, who's from Quebec, makes ketchup, which the first time I saw it, I was like, that's not ketchup. That looks like jam, salsa, something. It's chunky. It has like bits of tomatoes and onions and all sorts of things in there. It's still sweet. It's still tomato, but it's not smooth and runny. You would spoon it over something, not squirt it on something.
Right. Like it's not my fried potato depends on this condiment. It's just like, hey, this condiment or like this little thing adds some to this.
Yeah, exactly. Taylor, can you break down different types of mustard and what makes a great mustard?
Oh, man. What makes a great mustard? Different types of mustard. I'm actually currently working on different mustard recipes for a book, but as I'm going into this, I could write an entire book on Dijon, on just different styles of Dijon mustard, because I've done instructionals on how to make the hottest Dijon, because the hottest mustard you can make is with cold water and a freshly cracked mustard seed. That creates the flavor of mustard scientifically those ways. But then if you change the temperature of water any sort of way, if you change the acidity of that liquid any sort of way, that's where you get the different variables, and then you get the different vinegars and stuff like that. So what makes a great mustard to me is the great ingredient, the great vinegar. A lot of German mustards do a lot of brandied vinegars, something that we don't really have in the United States. And it's a shame that we don't have, because essentially vinegar, all it is over fermented alcohol, right? If I'm essentializing it. It is over fermented alcohol. But when it comes to German mustards, they have these brandied vinegars, fancy things there. So what really makes a great mustard to me is the vinegar.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And a lot of my tutorials too, I will talk about how to flavor the vinegar first and just focus on the flavor of the vinegar. And then we can get to mustard making, which in a sense, like, isn't hot sauce just flavored vinegar?
Yes.
Yeah. Yep.
In a way.
Except for the ones that don't have vinegar in them.
Yeah. We've got friends that make kombucha hot sauce.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I'm Claire George. I own Butterfly Bakery of Vermont. We make hot sauce, mustard, cookies, and granola, and 100% of our products are made with Vermont ingredients. The thing that I hear most often from people is that my hot sauce tastes like the peppers that are in it. We do really simple recipes that don't get too crazy and nitpicky, just to really accentuate the flavor of the peppers that are in there. The unique thing about our hot sauces is how much we feature the farm and the relationship with the farm, and really bring the terroir of Vermont to our hot sauces. I am pretty sure I am the #1 purchaser of Vermont grown chili peppers. I would love it if there would be a legitimate pepper market in Vermont where people would know Vermont for its peppers. We're all better for supporting each other. You know, and I think that part really shows itself with the collaborations that I do with the other businesses and the other farms, that I love working together and coming up with new ideas and presenting each other with new challenges. And I think overall that's the attitude here. And I absolutely love it because that's my attitude. I try to live my life with love. The ingredients that I use, I would say that my values are reflected in that, that I use ingredients that, again, feel good, feel loving, feel supportive. The relationship with the farmer was how it all began. If I changed the reason for it being, if I went out and bought some commodity peppers, you know, it might not be as good.
You can find Butterfly Bakery of Vermont hot sauce, mustard, granola, and cookies at butterflybakeryvt.com.
Yeah. So what is your favorite mustard, if you have one?
Just ask me which one of my children are my favorite. Jeez.
I get it. I understand. I refuse to answer a question like this personally.
So I'm not going to answer this question with store-bought, because my whole thing is making my own. And my favorite mustards to make are ones that are left over from pickled brines. Like
Nice.
pickled banana peppers, pickled pepperoncinis. The banana pepper was my favorite, pickled red onion. I actually really hate the taste of pickled cucumbers, but every single one of my friends says that my pickled cucumber mustard is the best. Because as I said earlier, the flavor of the vinegar is really the important part of a mustard making process, even though vinegar isn't necessary for mustard making. It's just if you're...
Depends on where you want to go with it. Interesting.
Right. Because then you also get into Coleman's, because people want to discuss with me Coleman's all the time, because they do have a very particular, like, hot mustard, and people don't think about mustard heat in the same, or people think of mustard heat as the same way they do hot sauce heat, but those are two completely different heats. Yes. Mustard heat is more like a horseradish heat, like that very nasally, rising to your nasal cavities when you eat it kind of situation.
I love that heat.
Me too. And one of my favorite things about this is because when you eat hot sauce and you have too much hot sauce and you can't control that heat, what do? You drink milk, you eat sour cream, you cry yourself to sleep. I don't know what you do. You guys are hot sauce people. Y'all don't have this issue. But when it comes to mustards with that really high heat, all you have to do is open your mouth and be a mouth breather, because all that heat, all that insanity is in the nose. So it's just a different flavor to play with. I am working on a mustard book because I have spent so much time reading into mustard and delving into mustard, and I know that I have more mustard information than the rest of the world has published. And as I'm trying to write this, I'm also simultaneously writing an ADHD cooking book, because, like, that's where my brain goes.
I liked you did a video the other day with that, where you were setting timers, and I loved that. That was great.
Oh, yeah.
I've
You know
got
what happened
ADHD
right
too,
after that
so.
video? Okay,
What?
so in that video, I am creating just one of my, like, regular meals that I just eat to feed myself, not to impress anyone, just something to feed myself. But throughout the video, I'm setting 3-minute timers because I know I'm going to get distracted and I'm not going to remember I have anything on the stove. So I set 3-minute timers the entire way. And right after that video, my 3 button broke, which is so funny because as I'm writing this book, I'm calling it the 3-minute timer.
That's great. All right. So I got a question for you, and you're going to hate this one because it does involve store-bought mustard.
Oh, I don't think I'll hate it.
And or hot sauce. Yeah. And you've highlighted quite a few. So you were on a cruise ship. It sank. You're the sole survivor on a desert island. There was a lot of different food on the ship. It washes ashore, but there was, now I'm going to change this. Usually it's hot sauce. And I do want you to answer the hot sauce. What hot sauce? There was one on the ship. What hot sauce would you like to pull ashore? You can have it on everything. And also, what mustard would you like to have? There was only one on the ship. What would it be?
Pepper Palace Ghost Pepper.
Ah.
Is my hot sauce. And then for my mustard, it is Plotman's Cuban style mustard.
Oh, I saw you post about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
You answered that quicker than I thought you would.
So Plotman's Cuban style mustard is like their yellow mustard base, and then they add garlic and citrus and white wine to it. And as far as commercial mustards go, like you can really taste the citrus and the garlic that goes in there. And a lot of my content now is, while I do show people how to make mustard, I also like show people how to cook with mustard and how to add mustard to recipes and stuff like that. But Plotman's Cuban style mustard is just the best cooking mustard. Like, I've never been cooking anything and it's like, I don't think it needs more garlic. You know, I've never been like that. It just adds a little more oomph. Because whenever I'm cooking with mustard, I'm there to add oomph. Same when I'm cooking with hot sauce, I'm adding oomph. Yeah. And so the Plotman Cuban style.
Got it. Awesome.
Nice.
Okay.
I'll have to try that. That sounds really interesting.
The Pepper Palace, I used to be a very picky eater. I didn't like much of anything. And there are studies, and I've looked over studies that show that if you are a picky eater, if you have a child that's a picky eater, the best way to get them to expand is with positive reinforcement. Like just say, hey, you know, we're going to put it on your plate. If you don't like it, that's fine. But you do kind of enjoy it. We're going to celebrate it like it's the biggest party. And I say this a lot with mustard because a lot of people will come to my page and tell me they don't like mustard. And so my first response is typically, so you're a child. But it just means that your taste buds develop over time. Biologically speaking, you are more geared for sweeter things because you need that energy to get you into adulthood. But bitter things are typically, or poisonous plants are typically bitters. That's why children have a huge aversion to bitter things. So that's why it's more of an acquired taste. It's like once you've had the privilege of continuing on to live with life, you know, you are able to handle more bitter things that are not going to kill you.
Taylor, who inspires you and why?
If I'm going to talk mustardy, I may as well talk Barry Levinson. Barry Levinson is the founder and curator of the Mustard Museum in Middleton, Wisconsin.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, you've heard of this guy? Oh, yeah. Man. But it's great about him because in 1986, he was the assistant attorney general in the state of Wisconsin. And then he decides that he needs to switch over to make mustard. I can't remember which team Barry Levinson was rooting for in 1986 World Series. After his team lost, he left the World Series and he's like in a disarray. Like he's the assistant attorney general of Wisconsin. He's in a disarray. He's on a plane and he sees like a sample of mustard and he just hears a voice going, if you collect them, they will come. And he's just like, okay, this is weird. You know, whatever, walking through a grocery store and he's feeling this way about mustard. So then he quits his job as assistant attorney general for the state of Wisconsin. And then he just starts collecting mustard. And right now he has the largest collection in the world. Last time I talked to him in 2021, it was over 6,000. I'm sure he's at like 65 right now. But largest collection in the world. And there are so many other mustard museums throughout the world too. But this is the only one that focuses on mustards all over the world. Because mustard museums throughout the world just focus on that particular area.
We've got somebody like that in the hot sauce world. Yeah. Vic Klinko. Yeah.
Klinko?
Vic Klinko, yeah. He has the world's largest hot sauce collection.
And he has, 12,000 bottles, something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
Oh, wow.
The Mustard Museum, they have a contest every year, and we've just entered, and hopefully we'll hear good things. So, and we sell in their shop
on that
too.
board. I'm trying to get on the mustard tasting board. No one has invited me so far, but
I don't know how they choose their judges.
I want to be the judge, so we'll see.
We're putting that out there then.
Yeah. Have you reached out to them?
Yeah, I actually have Barry Levinson's number in my cell phone. It makes me feel like such a mustard princess. It's like no one can tell me anything. I got Barry Levinson's number in my phone, and then people would go, "Who is Barry Levinson?" I'm like, "Oh."
Very important in the mustard world.
Yes. Which, as you were talking about earlier, it's not as crowded as the hot sauce world. So,
well, and I think one of the difficulties is that people will have 127 bottles of hot sauce in their personal in use in their fridge. And then they come and they buy their single mustard. And they're like, and when I am done with that jar of mustard, I will come back and buy another jar of mustard. You're like, oh, goody. Okay. Well, I'll be here next time you're buying your next jar of mustard.
Oh, but for me, I have all sorts of different mustards for so many different mustarding occasions. And that's how I verbiage mustard. We're mustarding. A lot of my mustard cooking, it's a lot more into adding it to baked goods, adding it to sauces to like round out the flavor. Because, the name of this podcast is Flavor Balance Heat. So when you're thinking about balancing flavor, you're thinking salt, acid, heat, savory, all that. But a component of that that's often missing is bitter. And mustard is literally the flavor of bitter. And people overlook bitter when they're balancing their foods. And so all you need is just a little mustard, and you don't even have to think about that anymore.
I do that often with our sauces. I'll add a little bit of mustard. I like the way it just kind of adds a little something extra, another level of depth. Flavor Balance Heat is brought to you by High Desert Sauce Co. out of Tucson, Arizona. Zach is the owner and creative mind behind High Desert Sauce Co.'s hot sauces. He says, at High Desert Sauce Co. we make sauces that we love. The balance of bold heat and fresh flavor is the heart of our philosophy. We keep it simple by using the best ingredients we can get our hands on and letting the natural flavors run the show. High Desert Sauce Co. Just the good stuff. Visit High Desert at hdsauceco.com.
What kind of baked goods do you add mustard to?
Yeah.
Oh,
brownies.
So of the people that have seen my stuff, I'm sure you've seen my brownies, because mustard brownies, legit, that really is a thing. I had a friend that called me to tell me that they did my recipe for brownies, and I ruined their brownies. They said that they were too fudgy. The flavor was too one-noted. It was terrible. And I listened to their call, and I'm like, wow, tell me everything. Did you follow my recipe verbatim? And they were like, well, I didn't add the mustard. Someone literally called me and said, hey, I used your exact recipe, but didn't use mustard. Well,
I write recipes, and I have a carrot cake recipe that that's loved and etc. And I had somebody write me a very angry email about how the carrot cake turned out awful. And the only changes that they made were that they floured the pan and then it fell apart. And I was like, yeah, that's why I say don't flour the pan, because it'll fall apart. It's a very fall apart,
so you
prone to falling apart.
Specific, like, hey, don't do this in the recipe. And then they did it.
Well, I just said grease the pan. And they're like, well, of course you always flour the pan. I'm like, no, because that's a different process. And then they used vegan cream cheese for the cream cheese frosting instead of regular cream cheese. And they're like, well, when I use it uses just fine. So it should work in this, but it was all runny and totally wrong. And I'm like, well, you changed the main ingredient and all the gums are different. And why do you change everything and then complain to me that it didn't work?
Yeah.
And that's kind of where I'm at with my whole releasing my mustard recipe books, because it only takes a little change to just change everything.
Yeah.
And so while I'm thinking about writing a book with just all my mustard recipes, I feel like I need to make more of a series, because just in the Dijon world, it's just like that little bit of a change makes a huge difference. Just a different type of white wine, because Dijon is essentially, I call it lowercase Dijon, uppercase Dijon. Lowercase Dijon is essentially any mustard that is made with some sort of white wine. Capital case Dijon is made from the Burgundy region of France that source their seeds from Burgundy, that sources their wine from Burgundy. Like, there's a lot more, like, you know, classifications there. And then you have the lowercase Dijon. But with lowercase Dijon, people ask me all the time, what's my best recipe for that? And it's just, I don't know. What are you looking for in a Dijon? There's so many different ways. You want it hot, you want it mild, you want it mild hot, you want it to be a pepper hot with a mild mustard heat, you want a high mustard heat with, you know, sweet. So many ways to go about that.
Awesome.
I'm fucking loving this. I'm sorry. We haven't had somebody on the podcast this fucking excited about what they do in a minute.
See, we're just a bunch of nerds. And
it's a breath of fresh air. It really is.
I feel like I'm just talking to friends, and like people want to know what's up with my mustard. I'm like, oh, let's talk about mustard.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
So Spike's a psychopath. It just is what it is. His mind goes
I know.
Yeah. So I will say, has this idea of doing $100 hot sauce. And by that, the ingredients, the packaging, the processes are all going to warrant a $100 price tag on this single bottle of hot sauce. So do you have any input on what ingredient or a fermentation process or anything along those lines?
Packaging, anything
that would entice you personally to buy a $100 bottle of hot sauce?
So, okay, first things first, like, of course, when you hear $100 hot sauce, like, what could be in there to make that? First thing I think of is gold flakes and truffles. Of course. Like, this is just the thing we throw in there so people can see visibly on the bottle, like, hey, this is $100 sauce. But my professional background is in bartending. And there is a classification of drinks where it's essentially just stump the bartender drinks, where people only know the name of these drinks so they can be an asshole to their bartender. That is it. And the one I am thinking of specifically is the Commonwealth, which is a drink that was made for the 2014 Commonwealth Games, like the UK Commonwealth. It was like a huge ordeal. They had all sorts of food and drinks for this 2014 thing. And this man created a cocktail with 71 ingredients sourced from each country in the Commonwealth.
Wow.
And so, right. So you're looking at all these different African island countries, like all these very specific ingredients there. And so I'm thinking, if we're doing that, I would spend my money in the sourcing. I would pick a pepper or truffle from all 50 states, or a pepper and truffle from all the counties that I care about. Or if I'm doing a specific, even like a Mason-Dixon line series. But like, that's where I would focus. That $100 would not necessarily be in, hey, how do I justify this specific ingredient? But it would just be more so sourcing. Or like, ooh, because I do think about truffles in these. Like, could you imagine getting truffles from all 50 states?
We're kind of the anti-truffle crew.
We're not a truffle community.
No. So truffle and hot sauce. There's only one hot sauce that I've had where truffle has worked for me. And so that's one of the things where, have you had very many of the truffle hot sauces?
No, but I have created a Facebook group called Fucking Truffle Oil. I have created that because I hate the taste of that, because when it's artificial and it's done terribly, it tastes like foot.
Yeah.
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 That's what a lot of truffle that's what a lot of truffle hot sauce is
foot?
Essence of truffle.
Yeah.
And truffle oil.
Truffle oil. Yeah. And it just
Dirty
sits on
asshole.
there and coats, and
It's awful.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So if it's not truffle or mushroom that I would source, I still would focus on sourcing peppers from different states or even different countries, depending on what I'm discussing about.
We're talking about koji fermentation as possible one. By the way, just for your information, while I was researching for today, I happened to come across, and I have to re-find it. I'll send it to you. Koji fermented mustard.
Oh, yeah.
cool.
Okay.
And I did pick up some koji rice.
Okay.
So I have it. Figure out what to do with it.
Koji. I have never
Me
worked
neither.
with that. I really need to work on that, because one of the main questions people ask me about how to make mustard, how do you ferment mustard? How do you do it? And then for me, it's just, I still haven't figured out how to answer this in a 60-second video. I have not figured this out, because when you crush mustard seed and combine it with a low acid liquid, that's its own fermentation. And then if you leave the mustard seed whole with some sort of liquid, that's its own fermentation. Add salt or sugar for something to feed on, that's a different fermentation. And then you can create a mustard and then add salt and sugar and let it ferment. And then that's a different fermentation. There are like 6 or 7 different ways where you can ferment mustard. And so when people ask me how to ferment mustard, it's like, what are you talking about? Like, what flavor are you wanting when you're fermenting?
Right.
That's awesome. I like having all those avenues.
Yeah, right. I had no idea. Like, I've made some mustard. It came out okay. You know, it wasn't bad. We used it. It's, you know,
how many times did you make mustard though?
Just like once or twice.
Once or twice.
I'm saying. I didn't realize there was like a whole fucking mustard subreddit.
Didn't realize there was a whole mustard queen or anything over here.
No.
Yeah.
Mustard is just so complicated.
Yeah,
it's just
really
so you know, when I first started working with it, I really treated it just like I would treat a pepper or I'd treat any other ingredient. And it is just not. It is just, it is so complex. And the thing I always like to say is that making hot sauce feels empowering. Making mustard feels humbling. Like it just always throws you for a loop.
The thing is about mustard making that drives me insane is like, I always say the phrase mustard is bitter on its birthday, meaning the day you make it, there are bitterness compounds that are left over from the mustard making process that leaves a little bit of bitterness over there, but it dissipates within a day. Yeah. It might be a week. It might be a few weeks. So if you make a mustard, it's going to taste different that first day, that first week, months. And that is just so hard to commercialize and try and like keep that same flavor.
And just even the way that I make mustard, I mean, I want to spend time figuring out how to make mustard differently than the way I make it. It's just the way that like I found worked and I kept going with it. But I can't put in those really volatile, spicy notes because I haven't figured out how to stabilize them long enough for shelf stability. And I'm always amazed when I open up like a Grey Poupon or something that just is so nasally bitter and I can't get that to hold.
Boat G's is one of my favorites out of Rock Island, a city outside of Chicago. I think it's like an hour or 2 outside of Chicago, but it's called Boat G's and it's spelled Boetje, but they pronounce it Boat G's. But it's just one of my favorite. It tastes like they just created it. And people don't think of the flavor of mustard as something that's so similar to that horseradish. But like, that's the goal for a lot of my mustard making is to keep that flavor because it is so volatile. Easily evaporatable.
Yeah.
Flavor Balance Heat, the podcast for hot sauce lovers and makers, is brought to you by Irish Spike's unique hot sauces and Vandal pepper sauces. I'm Spike, the owner and executive saucier. Our sauces are handmade in the Pacific Northwest using the best possible ingredient. We believe that hot sauce equates to a balance of sensational heat coupled with a robust and complex flavor profile. Live your hottest life with Irish Spike's. Irish Spike's unique hot sauces and Vandal pepper sauces are available at saucecult.com. It's our hot takes. So we're going to double this up. Do you have any hot sauce and mustard hot takes?
I don't like sugar in hot sauce.
Oh.
I like using fruits and other things to sweeten it naturally for me. Like one of my favorite hot sauces before I got really into mustard making, one of my best sellers for hot sauces was a strawberry reaper. And that's still to this day one of my favorites. Trying to think of some other hot takes, but and as far as mustard making hot takes, I will always have a coarse mustard because straining is a bitch and not worth it ever.
Yeah.
I agree I agree that same basic concept with hot sauce. People ask me all the time, do you strain your product? I'm like, why the fuck would I do that?
No, don't get rid of all that good stuff.
Yeah, like make it make sense.
Hot sauce show and tell.
Oh, this is fun.
So, Taylor, did you bring a hot sauce for hot sauce show and tell?
Hang on. I'll be right back. I gotta go get.
Oh yeah, you gotta go.
I
gotta go get a fucking bottle of hot sauce.
Hold on, let him go get a bottle. We have a mustard hot sauce, but we're actually discontinuing it. I know. I really like mustard hot sauces, and I just can't get enough movement out of them. And I gotta figure out. I gotta tweak it. But
I hate to say this. Taylor's gonna hate this. I sent Taylor our mustard hot sauces, and your answer was. they're not mustardy enough when we
Yes.
talk. And the funny thing is, that's why they work. They actually do well because
Why they work is because they're not mustardy enough.
yeah, I have people that'll come up and they're like, I don't usually like mustard, but I really like this a lot. And so it kind of is, I consider them to be the gateway drug to mustard.
One of my favorite mustard brands, Old Brooklyn mustards. I don't know if you've ever seen any of their mustards, but they're essentially, they're the whole mustard seed mustards. It's essentially pickled mustard seeds, which how mustard seeds work. The chemical reaction to create the flavor of mustard doesn't start until the mustard seed is cracked. But when you're pickling mustard seeds, over time, the ability for that mustard seed to create flavor just disappears. So when you're pickling mustard seed over time, it just takes on the flavor of things on there. But Old Brooklyn mustards, absolutely love them. But I know they have a huge fan base of people not actually liking mustard. They just like the whole seeds popping, and they like the vinegar salty mix that they have near the mustard seeds. But I will say it makes a beautiful garnish. And they've sent me some other stuff to where it does taste like mustard, but I can totally see where you're coming from with a people don't like mustard, but they like our mustard kind of situation.
Yeah, it's just I consider it the gateway drug to mustard. It's like, okay, we're getting you there just a little bit at a time. I do have plans.
Called honey mustard the gateway mustard.
Oh, that makes sense.
I fucking hate honey mustard. There's my hot take. Honey mustard is so fucking gross.
Do you just not like sweet things?
I'm not a big sweet guy, honestly, but I'm not saying like crafted honey mustard wouldn't be good, but like store-bought honey mustard is the fucking worst.
Well, it's mostly sugar. I mean, it's like 50% sugar, honey-ish sugar, and then 50% mustard. It's like
I said what I said, and I give zero fuck.
This conversation is definitely inspiring me to I wish mustard were more popular because then I could have more time playing with it and figuring it out.
Yeah.
And I just need to do that. I really want to try getting some more stable heat out of it. And I do too. That's really is my goal. I want to be able to get that nasal along with the peppers really bad. Well, I think one of the difficulties that we need to have a high temperature during bottling. And I think that knocks it out. Yeah, I agree. And I know it's possible because clearly there's, nasally mustards out there, but I don't know. All right. So let's see.
Keeping mustards nasally is just being able to let it prepare. Because that's the whole point of why you're adding acid to a mustard is to let that sit. Because if we didn't need any sort of preservation of the flavor, that's the only reason why acid exists in there is to preserve the flavor of the mustard, not to preserve the mustard itself. So it is a very timey thing.
So if we because we prep our sauce the day before, if we prepped a sauce and soaked mustard in water the day before, the next day, if we bottled the hot sauce, would that affect the mustard to help bring out that, let the seeds soak in water overnight and then the next day?
So when it comes to mustard seed with the water, it only takes about 10 to 15 minutes for mustard seed and water. Now you may want to add vinegar to it overnight so that way the vinegar has the chance to capture that flavor.
Okay.
So yeah, that's really the only point of adding acid to mustard. Okay, it's not. Sour in mustard is amazing and acidity in mustard is amazing. That's not the only point. But that is the main point of why acidity is added to mustard is because if they didn't, that flavor would just go away and we would never taste it off the shelves.
Awesome. The
issue I've had with getting heat to stay in my mustard is the fact that I have to bottle it at 200 degrees. And then I know heat kind of destroys that heat. So, I mean, obviously that's, condiment mustard makers have figured that out, but that's where I lose that mustard heat.
That's what we discussed. Taylor and I have talked about doing a collaboration sauce, and we discussed it when we were on the phone about that.
That's when you would really benefit from letting it sit overnight with the vinegar before doing it. So that way the vinegar.
And I do.
Okay, you do. Okay.
I soak my mustard seed. I soak that for.
So it's different once the seed breaks. Because for the chemical reaction, it requires the seed breaking and then it to be hydrolyzed.
Are you saying that Claire should break the mustard before soaking it?
Yeah, absolutely. So when you soak mustard seeds whole and then add the liquid, it does tame it down. If you were to crack open the seed and then combine, that's where you get the hottest flavor. So when you're making hot sauce and you're trying to preserve that flavor, I would take, do you typically use brown or black mustard seeds?
We use brown and yellow. We use a mix.
Okay. Look into black mustard seeds.
Yep.
Those are insanely hot, and those can be also where you get that bitter thing, but that's also where you get like that hottest thing. But soaking it overnight, or like cracking the mustard seeds and like sifting it too, because like the seed husk, like outside the seed never really wants to disintegrate as well as everything else.
Well, we also add powder. We add it later to thicken it, but that never gets the soak overnight. So maybe that's the key, is we need to soak the powder before adding it to the seed and everything else.
Oh, I use mustard powder to thicken up so many things. Like, it is such a good
thing. Yeah, no, it's great.
Studies, a mustard seed, like a mustard particle, it can absorb up to 7 times its weight. So when we're talking recipes here, it is so hard for me to write recipes because it can absorb up to 7 times. And so the whole, like 1 part mustard, 2 part water, not always perfect.
My staff gets so frustrated because every batch of mustard powder and seed that we get absorbs a wildly different amount of liquid. Yeah. And so they'll say to me like, oh, I'm adding the mustard powder to thicken it, and I've added way more than I would ever add, but it's still really liquid. And I'm like, yep. Keep going. Like, and they're like, but it's so much more. And I'm like, no, keep going. Like, pay attention to the mustard. If the mustard's not doing what it's supposed to do, keep adding more. Otherwise, we're just going to have soup, and nobody wants that.
Yep. I had
what the actual mustard studies say is the particle could absorb up to 7 times, but like the way the recipes are written on the back of Coleman tins and on the back of any sort of other mustard tin, it is 2 parts or 1 part water, 1 part mustard. That doesn't work. Doesn't work. And it makes it to where, mustard is pretty complicated. We've discussed that mustard can be complicated, but I feel like it overcomplicates.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. We've got our hot sauce show and tell. So Taylor, what'd you bring?
I brought Professor Fart Pounders.
Colon cleanser. Cleaner.
And I got this because it was one of the first sauces I've ever searched for that was a mustard hot sauce. And it very much so is a mustard hot sauce, but part of their ingredients is that the mustard is already prepared when they add it to there. And so I think that's an issue with a lot of mustard hot sauces is they don't let the mustard prepare first.
That makes sense. That was the issue that we ran into.
Right. Giving it time to prepare, because even overnight, as opposed to letting it sit 2 weeks, huge difference.
Right.
Yeah, but when you're doing a commercial grade hot sauce, it's not something you can let sit around for 2 weeks. You gotta get it bottled.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
So.
Well, you can still let some of the ingredients prep the ingredients.
The mustard.
It's kind of like fermentation, but not fermentation.
Yeah. What do you got, Claire?
Right. Well, with creating mustard, it's a different type of fermentation.
Right. So I brought this cheeked out sauce leopard. I actually don't know why I have it or where it came from. It was in my cabinet and I was figuring out what to bring. And honestly, it looks pretty good. It's a cucumber hot sauce and I love cucumbers, and it's got horseradish. I have not tried it. I normally always bring stuff.
Their sauces are really good too.
Yeah.
I think I've tried that one. I think I had it at Fiery Foods.
Yeah. My husband clearly bought this because I have no idea where it came from.
Zach, do you want to go next?
I got this
really
Ginger Goat Star.
I've had that one. That one's really good.
Yep, I think I have that one too, actually. I really like this. I'm going to start using this.
What is it that was a cucumber hot sauce?
Yeah, cucumber and horseradish, and there's some lime and what else did I see in there? The jalapeno, turmeric, it's got brown mustard in it. There we go.
Okay.
It's on point. Oh, and pineapple.
Okay, so I also do live cooking content. That's a completely different thing, but I do a lot of live cooking shows. And this past Thursday, I was doing a Greek marinated chicken, and I was making a tzatziki sauce. And I was doing the whole salting my cucumber and letting the water drain from that, so that way I can get my best cucumbers for my tzatziki sauce. And the leftover cucumber, like the salted cucumber water I had, and it looked so bright and green. I added that. I added some mustard powder to that.
That sounds fantastic.
Yeah.
I
Yes,
love
it's like
I love cucumber
icy
water.
cucumber, but then you
juice.
also
Yeah.
got the heat from the mustard, like that horseradish heat. And I'm trying to think of a way to describe it to people. And I was describing it to my mustard to my husband as icy hot. And he's like, that's like
Icy hot mustard.
Icy
Spike,
hot mustard. Like, it works.
I brought Mustard Glen. So this is a really good sauce. This is made by J. Smallbatch. And,
California Hot Sauce Solutions.
Yeah, California Hot Sauce Solutions. They make great sauces. This has I can never say this right. It's the Scottish Scotch, the one that Ron Swanson loved so much. Lagavulin. Is that how you say it?
Glenlivet's like 15 years. Some shit
No,
like
it's
that.
I don't have my other glasses on here, but it's with Lagavulin. Is that how you say it? Hold on.
What are you talking about?
Okay, so
But it has scotch in it.
Is that the seaside scotch?
Where's it at? Yeah, it's
It's the seaside scotch. Like, I know what you're talking about. I can't say the word, but
What are you looking
Yeah.
for?
Lagavulin. That's it. Lagavulin single malt Scotch whiskey. That's what it is. It's a really good Scotch whiskey.
Cool.
Like really good. It's in Parks and Rec. It was Ron Swanson's favorite Scotch. Anyway, it's got just a little bit in there. It is really, really good. Look at that color. If you can see it, beautiful.
that is a beautiful color.
I have to say, there's not a lot of foods I dislike in this world, and Scotch is on that short list.
Oh, really? When I drank,
the
Scotch
peat?
was.
It's the
Peat. It's the peat. And I have had non-peat Scotch, and it's amazing. The peat is just,
That's so
I don't
good.
like it.
That's fair.
That is really good.
It tastes like foot.
Peat, yeah. Yeah. And I like
don't always know
foot.
that mezcal
I like the taste of
sometimes.
foot sometimes, but not peat
It
foot.
tastes like truffle.
Cheese. I'm in a cheese state, and I like footy cheese, but not peat.
So, Miss Rose, what's next for you? What is next for you?
Oh, what's next for me?
And-
I am in the
and
middle
mustard.
of writing 2 different books of mine. One is going to be my first Dijon book, weirdly enough. Also working on an ADHD book. But then from then on, people have asked me so many times when I'm going to create my first commercialized sauce. And I've thought about this, about whether I just want to wing it and just throw that out there. Because I do live in the state of Tennessee. And I don't know if y'all are familiar with the cottage laws in Tennessee. But when it comes to Tennessee, we have the Food Freedom Act, which essentially all we need is a label that says the ingredients in order by weight, got to have our address. And that's basically it.
Wow.
That is the Food Freedom Act. And so I have wondered if I just need to go and get started with that, because I have the freedom. But then with cottage laws, you're not able to take that over state lines. And then
Right.
also I am a face on the internet, and my address would be posted on labels.
Well, and we can help you
Your
with that.
address doesn't have to be posted. You can have a P.O. box or anything like that. It doesn't have to be your
Well,
home
with
address.
Tennessee, they said it can't be a P.O. box. It has to be like a home address. It can't be like a commercial kitchen or anything, like for the Food Freedom Act.
Oh, so we can help you.
Yeah.
Maybe that's something.
It's not that hard to get everything certified
bypass
through the
that.
FDA. Yeah, it's fine. We can help you with that.
Yeah.
Which is a question I was going to ask y'all too, is I do have this, I want to make my own sauce, but just starting out and production wise, it just feels very gate kept.
Well, there's a lot of complication to starting to make your own sauce. There's this whole world of acidified food law to protect people from,
Dying?
from botulism. Thank you. For some reason, what came to mind was Ebola, not botulism. Trying to protect people from botulism. So there's this whole set of rules that have to be followed. For that reason, a lot of people use a co-packer, wear a co-packer, and then it just means you don't need to know all those rules or follow all those rules, because somebody else will follow them on your behalf. But there's a multitude of ways about going about it. It's if you don't mind following rules and you don't mind following the detail, it's not that hard to build a space, but you do have to have a kitchen and you do have to have all the things. And I guess it really depends on if you want to be more in the business of making it or selling it. on if you'd want to have somebody else make it for you to your specs or to just make it yourself.
And that's so difficult for me because, like, all I know is I want to talk about it. I just want to be in the space.
Yeah.
I want to exist in the space. And that's all I know I want to do is I just want to exist here.
It sounds like a co-packer would be
happy.
exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah. You're a recipe developer, so you can take that to somebody and say, make it like this.
Yeah.
And you just want to make sure you get a good co-packer so that they're making it the way you actually want it.
Yeah. Yeah. And then they can help you figure out how to make it safe.
Yeah.
Right. Be advised, there is a world full of shitty co-packers. So make sure you trust your co-packer.
Yes.
So what would be a question I could ask a co-packer to where, like, I could figure out if they were the one? Like, what would be a question I could ask them?
There's no one question.
Yeah.
It's a relationship. You really have to have a good you really have to have a good relationship with your co-packer. It's a back and forth. You have to be willing to have good conversations about what needs to happen or not need to happen. Questions like, what is the process if it doesn't meet your specs? What is can they do your recipe?
Because I do a lot of recipe development, and, like, what if I did take my recipe to a co-packer and they just effed it up?
Zach, you want to talk about that one?
Okay.
Zach.
Hi. My name's Zach. We were featured on season 15 of Hot Ones. They ordered a fuck ton of sauce, and I could not make it myself. So I had to bring on a co-packer. I chose a company local to me. They bottled my product wrong, and it was blowing up in people's faces. And wanted they wanted to take zero responsibility. It was just a bad relationship from the get-go. Like, they promised me the world and couldn't deliver me dog shit, ultimately. And then when I called them out, they added like 15 pounds or 3.5 pounds of xanthan gum to a product that doesn't have any xanthan gum.
What? 3.5 pounds of xanthan gum?
It was a 100-gallon kettle. I mean, that's still a shit ton for a 100-gallon kettle. But
when I'm making a singular sauce, I'm like bringing out tweezers for my xanthan gum, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. 100%.
For a 100-gallon kettle, 3.5 pounds would be insane.
3.75 pounds and 15 gallons of water. Ultimately, I had asked these people for my money back on several occasions. They told me to go fuck myself. They delivered a product that was not shelf stable, not safe for human consumption, and then I was in a legal battle for 2.5 years that cost me like $60,000, and I got dick like nothing because they were going bankrupt.
This is why.
So I do think that one of the things, like one of the difficulties of Zach's situation is the fact that he was going from 0 to 60 with no time. Like Zach, if you had done, a small batch, a 40-gallon batch of sauce with them, you would have been like, oh shit, this doesn't work. And then you would have only lost out on that.
No. Okay.
No, okay.
We did a sample batch. I went up there. I took my own fucking ingredients to their kitchen and they made a batch of sauce.
Right.
But of course, I brought the ingredients. I was standing there while they were making the product. Like, I'm like, no, this isn't right. You know what I mean?
Well, I think that's what Claire's saying, though. You would have had time to see them acquire the ingredients that they needed to.
Also, I would say that right there should have given off alarm bells. They should have been using the ingredients that they're using in the 100-gallon batch in that 40-gallon test batch. You should not have been going up there with ingredients if that's not what they were sourcing.
Yeah, exactly. I thought it was weird, but I was coming like up on the 4-week mark on Hot Ones, and I'm like,
well, and there's so little time between notification and
my whole point of this is like if you get a weird feeling about the relationship with your co-packer, listen to it. If you feel like your co-packer maybe like telling you one thing and then sourcing a different kind of thing, pay attention. Ask for receipts. Ask, typically a co-packer will want you there the first day of production so you can sample the product, the whole thing. If you get any bad feelings, any sketchy, like, this doesn't feel right, listen to that shit because, I tried to, but they wouldn't let me, so I got fucked. It's okay.
So let's pretend that I'm looking for a new co-packer, and I'm like, hey, I'm the mustard queen. I have some mustard recipes. You should co-pack for me. Will you do it?
Claire should answer this. Claire is a co-packer, so.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you came to me, as a, looking for a new co-packer, or you were, shopping for co-packers and you came to me with recipes and stuff like that, personally, the very first thing I would ask to look at is that recipe. So we've got NDAs and all of that stuff to protect that. But I want to know, can we even make it on our equipment? Specifically, we've actually tried making other people's mustards and had problems with process because we use steam jacketed kettles. And that's basically a giant double boiler. And it's hard to get certain textures and we couldn't get a thickness out of this particular mustard because we couldn't get the temperature high enough. And we ended up burning the mustard, which nothing ever burns in a double boiler.
Oh,
wow. And it took us ages to clean it. It was awful. But we tried. But we tried on a small amount to see if we could do it. Looking over the recipe, I was like, the way this is made, this isn't something that we've ever done before. This is the potential pitfalls I see. This is what could work, could not work, etc. So yeah, that's always the first thing I look to see. I also try to make changes to the recipe to fit our equipment. So I'll say, this is what I think needs to change for the way we do things. Like, one of the things that people's home recipes often will have a lot of like sauteing and browning. And again, those steam jacketed kettles don't lend themselves to that. So sometimes it might be a matter of buying.
Like, when we're talking about this, we're just talking about you are only able to control a certain amount of ingredients being added to a thing. We're not like sauteing it or anything.
So a steam jacketed kettle is like a giant double boiler. It's got a little bit more heat behind it than a double boiler would have because it's pressurized. So up to like 30 PSI, there's steam in the jacket. And so it's not direct heat like from a flame. And so you can't really brown or saute because it just doesn't get hot enough for that. But you can control the heat it's a much more gentle heat, and it works really nicely for sauces, but not well for sauteing. So if somebody wants some ingredients sauteed, then we will sometimes we'll try to pre-buy roasted ingredients, or we'll try to roast them in our ovens, but we don't have huge oven volume. So there's a few different ways to work around it. Sometimes it's not even necessary to do it that way. And then if there's something like mustard that needs to be soaked, do we need to soak it in our cooler, or do we need to soak it at room temperature? Like, those are things that we need to pay attention to for fermenting, all these steps to see, can they work in our process?
What temperature you want to soak it at, it's just way slower in the refrigerator. If you are just soaking with the low acid liquid, it does need to be in the refrigerator, because after over 24 hours, that's when it can over ferment, and it does the other fermenting things I was talking about. Mustard can get so
it's fun.
It can get so it's fun.
And so that's why, like, especially with mustard, it would probably be really important for you to have a co-packer who will listen to you, because chances are you're not going to be going to a co-packer that makes tons of mustard. There's just not a lot of mid-scale craft, people. There's not a lot of mustard co-packers out there. There's just not. No, people who've had a lot of mustard
for me
experience.
To just focus on selling to my state, or should I go for a co-packer?
I mean, I think there'd be benefit in going with a co-packer, because you have followers from out of state who are going to want to buy it and going to want to get their hands on it, and you're going to want to sell it to them. And it's just like, that's not something that you want to get into legally, and, being on the internet. It just, that would be a mess.
And you won't have time to do anything on the internet. You'll be too busy producing.
Yeah.
And also there's just a lot of, so much about mustard, but they'll know about food safety. And so just knowing, I did have a different mustard person approach me, that never cooked their mustard. And they just reached out to me and was like, my store is saying that I can't do it this way. And I was like, well, they're not wrong. Like, you have to keep it in cold chain. If you're never going to cook it, it's not going to be shelf stable. They're like, but I've been selling it at the farmer's market this way for years. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm glad that I'm sure it is fine, but that's not what the law says.
It's been fun so far.
Right, exactly.
I'm currently arguing with a new Tucson hot sauce company about fermented shelf-stable products. But the pH, and I'm like, bro, it's just a tiny little piece of the fucking puzzle. Yes. You are not going to get a fully fermented shelf-stable sauce. You're just not. I don't give a fuck how you want to spin it. And he's like, my pH. And I'm like, bro, you're not hearing me. Like,
pH is half of the battle.
Yeah. But so especially if you're going to be encountering a co-packer who has never made a product like yours before, having a co-packer who will listen to you and what you want is going to be probably the most important. Excuse me, the most importance. But I would say you can pair the testing in their kitchen with the testing in your kitchen. So like if they say, well, we need to do XYZ for the process, you can say, great, let me try XYZ at home rather than paying for like their whole development process. There are also recipe developers who work on commercial products, about bringing products to commercial market. And we work with some of those recipe developers. They bring us their clients where they take a recipe that's a home recipe, turn it into a commercial recipe, and then they bring it to us and we turn it into a production recipe. So that's that also can kind of maybe bridge that gap of communication. They're also going to have a stable of co-packers who they've already worked with, they already trust, they already have more knowledge about. Those recipe developers are not cheap.
So I do want to mention that we are at the hour mark. So
yes,
we're going to have to do this again. I think we've got so much information. We're going to have to do a second episode at some point. Because
no, seriously, anytime y'all want me back on, I can talk about mustard all day long. I haven't even started my mustard spiel. Okay, I haven't even pulled out my whiteboard and like I haven't even done that.
I've been telling them.
I'm not going to start now.
I've been telling them I can't wait for this because this is awesome.
Seriously, anytime y'all want to have me, I'm here. This has been so much fun. It just feels like I'm catching up with friends, except, there are people I haven't met, but also to make hot sauce.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you doing this. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, it's been great talking to you.
It's nice, like, seeing someone that still has that spark. It seems like all us hot sauce people are burnt the fuck
There's
out.
some life in her.
Yeah.
We're doing the production, that's why.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Oh, yeah,
that's
yeah.
right.
Which I do have one final question for y'all.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
So I've been brewing about this idea, and I've been thinking about it for a while, about a particular type of mustard I want to create. And I'm just genuinely curious about your ideas for $100 mustard.
That's the next episode.
Truffles and gold flakes.
Rope them in.
This has been a Spike Mine Media production.